as beyond preconceived positionalities in transdisciplinary research, inhabitant interviewers incubating agroecological transitions in the Indian Sundarbans Delta.
The time dates back to 2020 when Cyclone Amphan had wreaked havoc, in addition to the lingering threats of global pandemic of COVID. IIT Kharagpur, in a parallel scenario, had been researching on the practice of drying fish, which made them stumble upon the remote village of Kumirmari in the Sundarbans. The team from IIT Kharagpur decided to lend a hand to the village, as the plight of inhabitants and the struggle for survival was evident. The urge to survive by embracing the alternate livelihood of pisciculture was commendable, even though limited resources and lack of proper knowledge had left them no choice but to succumb to uncertainties. In order to survive the challenges, it is important to investigate the scopes and opportunities. Will the team from IIT Kharagpur be able to help the inhabitants? Will there be an alternative to the current threat of forced migration due to loss of livelihoods? Armed with research motivation and determination, the collective quest for survival continued. As the distinct need for scientific approaches and financial means were clear, the Kharagpur team embarked on a project proposal to bring in collaborators and funding.
This study presents or introduces a specific component of a transdisciplinary project called ENGAGE4Sundarbans. This project involves academia, NGO, grassroots organizations, local government institutions, and community in transboundary Sundarbans, the world's largest mangrove delta, the lower Gangetic deltaic part shared by India and Bangladesh. And this mangrove delta is also vulnerable to the threats of climate change. This project investigates the significance of community social resilience through utilizing local agroecology based livelihood opportunities to discourage the discourse of managed retreat from this climate change vulnerable delta. In this study, the project focuses for inland fishing as a mean for agroecological transition in Sundarbans. Because since time immemorial, the small scale fishing practices are found to be one of the principal traditional occupation of Sundarbans, which finds the following categorizations of forest fishing and inland fishing. But the recent trend marks a gradual shift towards the practice of inland fishing because the practice of forest fishing in the forested creeks, rivers, and rivulets that entails the risks of tiger and crocodile attacks. Also, this area, a biodiversity hotspot of global attention, enjoys a fortress type of conservation. So, therefore, due to strict forest law and sometimes atrocities and penalization by the corrupt forest officials, entails risks to the inhabitants working as forest fishers. Also, in the advent of Anthropocene, it marks a drop in fish stocks in the forested creeks. So they need to go deeper from the buffer region to the core region. That further entails and that further increases and enhances the risk factor. Despite this, there are prevalence of water resources in the island, and already there are customary practices of subsistence based inland fishing, which founds merits of income generation in the post disaster phase when all other livelihood opportunities like agricultural activities just took a halt due to salinity incursion in their lands.
But the pivotal question still persisted, and that was how to initiate. The inhabitants of Kumirmari stepped up to fight their battle. A series of discussions and brainstorming with the knowledge providers and the local people led to a number of inferences and identified the lacunas. The inhabitants themselves came up with the indicators after the issues were identified. They were confident about making it with pisciculture rather than being dependent on the uncertainties and threats of the forest for survival.
So this is the way to craft the ethnographic survey and positing the involvement of inhabitant interviewers in this study. From the selection of study area to problem identification, then the preparation of the research design, having the willingness among the community or user groups to work as inhabitant interviewers, then selection of the survey tool, then sample selection and orientation of the community people working as inhabitant interviewer with the survey tool, and finally the completion of survey and data collection.
The household surveys were done across the village by the active local women participants based on the indicators identified by the villagers and questionnaire framed by IIT.
So, in terms of designing the ethnographic study to assess the drivers and dynamics, enablers and constraints of the local agroecological practices through this transdisciplinary project called Engage for Sundarbans, a highly mobilized community or user group partners shown their keenness to work as inhabitant interviewers to implement the survey tool and design, justifying their insiders' involvement in gathering the first-hand and instantaneously triangulated data from their neighborhood where they have been residing over generations.
The tedious process of survey required volunteers, so the people of Kumirmari extended their support. The representatives were prepared to go door to door for building up confidence and documenting their stories. The inhabitants were taught the usage of cell phones to record the responses based on the selected indicators. The volunteers who had taken the pain to go across the village are now ready to enumerate their experiences and inferences. The prowess they had exhibited while gathering the data with the help of Survey CTO app is nothing but praiseworthy.
So, seven representatives from the community, three women and four men, they are mostly fishers and agricultural farmers in Kumirmari. They came to serve as inhabitant interviewers. Their, their age-old experience and exposures to the locally existing risk factors, disaster impacts, and agroecological practices were already there. So the survey tool used for the ethnographic study is Survey CTO, a software-based survey tool which is compatible with Android and iOS smartphones, which also offers online operation facilities and allows the creator to create complex survey design as well as checking previews and revision through test runs, and also instant facility of data monitoring and generating reports in various forms including Excel and all. Five of though out of seven inhabitant interviewers, five IIs or inhabitant interviewers were beginners with the smartphones. So they have to undergo an orientation to get familiar with the questionnaire and the survey tool. They need to overcome the challenges. They need to undergo demo preparation of surveying or interviewing. And finally, the distribution of work is chalked out among them. They have tracked the GPS location of the household. So here is a GPS location of the household samples of the data collected across the island. Simultaneously hold the role of intermediation and beneficiary of this transdisciplinary intervention that somehow reduces the asymmetry and divisions. They are encouraged to the study area as inhabitants on the one hand becomes crucial in prioritizing the set of agendas On the other, it dilutes the initial ice-breaking of facilitation and interaction with the user groups without involving external moderation. Thus, it enhances the capacity of a transdisciplinary research in terms of crafting strong cohesion with people meant to be benefited.